and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is March 10th, 2022, and we are joined by Arpi Agdere. Previously, she worked for 7 years as an in-house art producer at Vans in Los Angeles, but now she's the art producer at Wieden Kennedy in Portland. Arpi is originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and is deeply rooted in fine art and has a BFA from Art Center College of Design. As an artist, she would describe herself as a creative alchemist, as she enjoys producing art through a combination of diverse methods. In her downtime, she loves giving back to the art community by doing portfolio reviews and providing mentorships for creatives at every age. And she loves ice cream. Welcome, Arpi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad to have you here. And I'm not quite sure what to start with, either Istanbul or ice cream, because I love both as well. One of my most favorite trips ever was to Turkey, and it was magical. So it's just such a special place in the world.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this. I definitely listened to your podcast before, and I was very honored that you reached out to me.
Oh, gosh. Well, I said this to you before we started, and I think, one of the biggest values for people who listen to our podcast is that they feel like we've pulled the curtain back for them, so it's like you and I can have a very transparent, honest conversation, not a lot of editing here, where we're just discussing things that people who may not have access to you or I regularly could feel like they're part of our conversation. So I am really appreciative, especially given your background and all the insights that you'll be able to share with us, that you can be here today. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
But first, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
It changes.
It does.
Yeah. Right now it's lavender, but it changes.
Oh, that's awesome. I like lavender.
Yeah.
Although my son, I was out for a walk last night and he texted me, is your walk taking you by the market? And I'm like, it could. What do you want? And of course he wanted ice cream. And I totally blew his mind by showing up with like 10 pints of different types of ice cream. He was like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
So I think I left all the bad flavors for everyone else. And I just brought home a bunch of other flavors for him. So needless to say, we had an ice cream party last night. So it was delicious. But, I always like to start by kind of just learning a little bit about you besides your favorite ice cream flavor. Because I feel like not all producers obviously take the same path, because you don't learn about what we do really in college. You have to learn by being in the industry. So, maybe just give us a little bit of a background on how you discovered production.
Totally. Yeah. My background is in art. I went to art school in Pasadena. I mean, ever since I was like a child or a kid, I was always like good at art. And that was like the only thing I was interested in. I used to, do oil painting, and like I just loved art so much. And then it transitioned into photography. And then I ended up just studying fine art and photography at Art Center. And then after that, I just really wanted to do production, but I didn't really know exactly where it was going to land or how I was going to get there. So I kind of just did some freelance production, and I loved being on set. And after that, I've heard that, Vans was looking for an in-house producer. So I worked there as a contractor for 6 months. And after that, I was hired in-house. And when I started, it was very, very small. They were still growing. So I kind of that was like my big start.
Oh, that's kind of exciting. So you got to start at a time, I'm guessing if they were really small, you got to get your hands on a lot of things that you might not have otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was still like pretty corporate, I would say, but I think the team kind of doubled in size after a couple years. So I really got to see the growth. And yeah, like I technically was the only person there as the first art producer there. So I had to just kind of do everything myself, which was kind of awesome because I, could also kind of set the rules too and sort of move forward based on like, okay, well, there's no history. So I kind of just be the first one to just make this happen.
Did you feel like you were kind of in a vacuum doing it? Like you were inventing it along the way? Or did you have people that you could reach out to kind of help put processes in place or figure out
it was definitely a mix of both, because there were people who were sort of coming in and out, and there were people who were sort of, taking charge of, the creative services team. But then also there were some things that I was already doing that kind of stayed. But yeah, I would say it was a mixture of both.
That's great. Well, so given all of those experiences, and now here you are at Wieden, and you've brought all those experiences with you, and you've probably learned from the amazing people that you're surrounded with there.
Yeah.
What are you known for on your team?
I think the art producers in our production team are all known for finding diverse talent and creating a space that's inclusive, always looking for new talent who might not be like as famous or discovered or have been around for many years. I would say that's like our biggest sort of thing that we're known for.
That's great. Yeah, that's we can talk about that a little bit more later, but I think you must have such amazing, the internet gives you such access to really kind of digging deep to find those unique different artists. So that's got to be an exciting part of your job.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. Staying at home hasn't really slowed anything down. So
no, I think it's added more onto our plate, to be honest.
Yes.
Well, share with us a little bit about your role as an art producer. What is it that if you can just explain to the people who are listening, what is it that you do? What's your day like?
So I've been on projects with many different clients, which is something I'm really grateful for because I really love a challenge. And some of the things I'm responsible for are, day to day, it's usually just like a lot of project kickoffs and sort of like having, a lot of meetings based on like how we're sort of approaching a project. It's a lot of like solving problems.
Yeah.
And just mainly just working on a production or, maybe it's, sourcing artists and, getting in touch with the creative team and, making sure that they're aligned and everyone's happy with our plan and what we're doing. And a lot of times, time is of the essence. So we have to do everything really quickly. I feel like that's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, let's do this as quickly as we can, but let's make sure that everything aligns creatively and production wise, and everyone is sort of like seeing eye to eye.
And don't you feel like when you have more time, it feels like everything takes longer because it's like we're all so used to working at warped speed that when we have more time on our hands, we are like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. We've got time.
Yeah, I know. It feels like people just forget, like it becomes forgotten. It's like, oh yeah, that project, you guys are still working on that?
Yeah. Well, what's the most challenging aspect of your job?
I would definitely say what I kind of mentioned before. Time is definitely the most challenging aspect. When it comes to production, time is of the essence, and we all have to be really quick on our feet. And if there's any like last minute additions to a production, it's definitely a challenge to sort of do that after everything has been sort of set in stone. But that does happen.
And how, open-minded, or not open-minded, maybe understanding are your clients with those time constraints? Probably varies by client, but do you have any tips or tricks that you use to kind of keep people moving or, maybe it is just setting expectations. That's probably would be my biggest tip. But what about you?
Yeah, definitely setting expectations, like constantly communicating like, hey, this is what we're doing. Just want to be clear. This is what you're getting. Like, because I think if you don't communicate that, people, you don't want any sort of assumptions. I think that's the key word, like you said.
Yeah, I think that is, even from where I sit, while I'm not a producer, I'm, a rep where I'm trying to get photographers jobs, obviously, but at the same time, I'm seeing estimates through and paying attention to things that are happening. And I feel like every single step of the way, if you aren't clearly communicating, or at least have an accountability to, everybody needs to have some sort of accountability to the process. Totally. It falls apart.
Yeah. And I think transparency is really helpful with everything that you're communicating, whether it's creative or like the budget and all that. And like, just making sure that everyone knows you're being fair. Because I think that's how you sort of build trust too. And you don't know what, the other person is like working through, whether you're on the agency side, the client side, or, if you're the photographer or the director. But it's just good to be transparent and, show them like, look, I'm trying, this is like option A, option B. I think that really helps build trust between people. Cause like if you don't trust each other, you can't work together.
Well, that is so true. And I think we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but this
Yeah.
idea of how, the producers in the job, and I would even say the reps to a certain extent through the beginning of the process, at least, have to be good translators. You have to speak the different language, the client language, the creative director language, the photographer language, the producer language. Like everybody comes at it from a very different point of view. And I think you're that hub and the producer on the shoot is the hub. And you need to make sure everybody is hearing it in their own language.
Yes, totally. And it's, it's a lot of repetition too. You have to repeat the same information over and over again and make sure like, okay, I translated into your language. I translated into your, like in the words that you would understand, or the information that you need is only this part,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I think you have to be a very clear thinker and a very clear communicator to be able to do that and not to get annoyed by that. Although I'm sure we all get annoyed. Okay, well, what do you love about your job? I know you're an artist, so you obviously love the creative process part of it, but like what else is there? Is there something like, getting on set or, putting together production booklets or, those sort of things? What is it that you really love about production?
I love being on set. I feel like working with people and being around people is definitely my favorite part about being an art producer. I don't mind also working remotely on an amazing illustration project, because I think there's a beautiful connection there too, like exchanging all these emails back and forth and going back and be like, oh my God, we sent each other 300 emails.
Yeah.
So it's just like people, like connecting with people and working together is a big thing too. And obviously the creative, it's just exciting to think about like, oh, okay, like how are we going to do the lighting, or what are some amazing locations that, or, this is like a different idea that, I haven't worked on before. And just sort of, experience. It's like a different experience every time. I feel like you don't know what's going to happen sometimes on a shoot.
Let's talk about a little bit more about the actual, producing part of what you do. What are your clients asking of you right now? And do any of them have a hesitation to produce? And if so, why? Or not? Maybe everyone's like, no, we are back at it, moving ahead. Is that what's happening at your end?
Yeah, I mean, we're back at it is what I would say. That's my answer.
Yeah.
Everything is back on. I think the whole, COVID is just part of production now. It's just like, we make sure there's COVID protocols and we make sure everything is, done the right way, but it's just part of production. Like, I don't think anyone is sort of hesitating. And obviously we are, keeping everybody safe and trying to have smaller crews and doing all of that. But I don't notice any hesitation there.
Yeah. Not with us either. I feel like even when it's time to cut the budget for whatever reason, nobody's really willing to cut those COVID protocols because it's so important.
It is. Yeah. No, it never came up for us ever. It was just like, oh no, that is just the way it is now. And that's another thing that sucks time.
Yeah.
But,
it does.
Yeah.
It does. I just had a conversation with someone today about the PO process and how it is taking so much longer for POs to get approved. It used to be that you would approve a job, you would turn around the PO yourself. You could do it really quickly. You'd send it to me. The photographer would look at it. We'd redline a few things. We'd send it back. We'd sign it. And that could usually happen in maybe 2 days. Now there are so many more layers of people involved from the corporate level. And, I know even in our group, we now have retained legal counsel because the contracts have gotten so complicated. And there's so much more to it that it's taking a lot of time. And we were saying how important it is to start putting in, building that into our pre-production schedule, right? So when you say to me, Arpi, Heather, send me a calendar for this job. If we award on this date, when can we shoot? I need to start realistically raising my hand and saying to you, like, okay, how long does it take on your end to get a PO out? And okay, well, it takes 3 days on your end. Great. It takes 2 on mine. That means we have to add 5 days to the schedule. There's no one's willing anymore to, I'll just start casting. I'll do this in good
Yeah.
faith. Like,
Yeah.
especially with COVID and all the, liability issues out there right now. So I thought that was such an interesting wake up call moment. We have to start
Mhm.
really, taking that part into consideration.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't had much struggle with the POs on my end personally.
Oh, oh, that's
I've
great.
had people like, work some miracles where it just was like a few days turnaround.
Yeah.
But, I guess it depends, like who you have and maybe if, you don't have enough people reviewing contracts and, you need additional support. And I can see how that could also happen.
Yeah. No, it's true. Okay, so what about the actual shoots that you're doing? Are most of them stills and motion, um, or is it mostly just stills?
Yeah, so far it's been mainly stills. It's a mix, but I would say mostly stills if
Yeah,
I had to weigh it. Yeah.
that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, so how about put your head around, start thinking about like choosing the artist when it comes
Mhm.
time to share a list with your creatives of people for them to consider. What's your process like for sharing options with your team?
I usually start with going through the creative and making sure, like, okay, is there anyone that you guys are thinking of first? And then I start kind of looking through my bookmarks and make sure I don't miss anybody that, I forgot. And we also have a lot of like decks that we've made in house. Our team has made this incredible deck that we use of talent, diverse talent. The people that I find, it could be from anywhere and everywhere. I think that's your question. It could be
Yeah,
from social media, it could be an email, it could be a promo, it could be like someone sent it to me and I just saved it. And I save everybody's information. If I get it like a promo email or anything, I have like a whole folder where I save everybody's information because you never know what's gonna come your way.
yeah.
So, and I've discovered there are so many incredibly talented people out there. I think whoever is, trying to get hired, just put yourself out there as much as you possibly can because people are saving your information and people maybe they're not reaching out to you immediately, but when the right project comes along, they definitely will.
And I think that's obviously the power of being able to communicate with you guys through email and on the internet, right? Like you could bookmark something or save something in Instagram or put it in a deck and I would never know, right?
Yeah.
A long time ago, you would have to call me for a portfolio. And I
Right.
knew that you were thinking about one of my photographers because you called in their portfolio. But now it's unfortunate for us because I don't get all that data, right? I don't know who's exactly engaging and how relevant my work is for an agency based on if I'm getting calls from them or not.
Mhm.
But it does mean that the reach is so much wider.
Yeah.
And that advice that you just gave is, to share your work. Because I tell photographers all the time too, like I'm super busy and I don't always have a chance to reply to every email that comes across my desk. So if you send me 6 emails in the course of a year sharing new work, maybe I've seen 3 of them, but I've seen them. And if you
Mhm.
didn't send any, I wouldn't have seen any. So like
Right.
I get that I'm going to have a full inbox and I'm just going to have to delete what I can't deal with, but you should really, if you feel like you have relevant work for an agency, you absolutely should share it.
Yeah. And, another thing, I don't know if anyone has brought this up. Another thing that sometimes people do is they'll attach like a low res PDF of their work. It's like easier to do a quick preview of the person's work or maybe even drag that to your desktop and save that. So you might have a higher chance of that person like saving your information because, oh, I like their work.
Yeah.
That's another thing I would also advise. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Okay. So let's say still kind of talking about choosing the artist. I'd love to talk a little bit about the creative call. We all know how critical it is. But I wonder if there's any advice that you have for artists around this. Does it hurt them if they're not on camera now, since we're all on Zoom? Anything that you think is important for them to be remembering about this call.
Like you said, I definitely think it's important to, show your face on Zoom whenever we're doing a creative call, because we're going to be spending a lot of time together.
Yeah.
So it's nice to sort of have a connection and, make sure that, like it's like warm. We're humans. We have to
Yeah.
just we're not robots. And it is a job, but it's still nice. Like it can be pleasant, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like this miserable thing. So I think it's important to show your face and your personality. And I think people want to see like your authentic work and how you would approach a project. So it is important to like also create like a treatment after the call too, because it is sort of like, we're rooting for you to get this job. And that really helps, is like a stamp, it's like, okay, well, this person is right because of these reasons. And I know it does take a little bit of time to create that, but I do think it helps tremendously.
Yeah, we're kind of jumping ahead, but I think it's such a big topic. I'd love to spend some more time on it right now since you brought it up. The treatments are equally as important to the creative call. And I feel like it is the time where your personality and your vision and your approach, right? And I think your approach is very different than your vision as a photographer for those who are listening. Like my point of view is your vision is creatively, what personality are you going to bring to this, and how are you going to partner with everyone? Your approach is 2 days on location, 1 day in the studio, natural light, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What And I know these take so much time, which you indicated. Tell me, like, what are the things that stand out? What are the things that you find your creatives oohing and ahhing over, or your clients end up zeroing in on, so that people can kind of know, one, that they're paying attention, and two, what are the things that rise to the top so that they can concentrate on those?
Yeah, I think we're just all trying to find the perfect person for this project. So it's kind of like swiping, and whoever comes closest to the creative, I would say is the best person that we want to hire. So, based on like, what kind of work you have. And, also in your portfolio, you want to show the work that you want to be hired for. So people unfortunately do put you in this box, and, it's like, oh, you only shoot, let's say like, apples. So I'm only going to hire you to shoot apples. But but it does work. It's kind of like a formula.
Yeah.
So if you have this really strong work, and the chances are you can show that as your, creative, and you will probably get hired because it will match the creative that we're trying to do. So it's like people like to be very safe and literal about who they want to hire, because they don't want to take a big risk because it's a lot on the line, So I
Yeah,
would
it's
say
expensive. It's a
it's
lot. It's a
expensive. Yeah.
relationship with a client. Like, it's a big
Right.
deal to be hired, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. But I do think it is important to take a chance and hire somebody that you're like, wow, they don't have like, maybe their work doesn't match 100% what we're trying to do. Like they would still kill it. They would be amazing. So it just depends. But I do think most cases they do want to just get as close as they can to the creative, and who's able to shoot this, or work on this project, whether it's, oh, we're shooting this outside on this one specific location, and like, some people want to know, like, can you handle this?
Yeah.
So it's just,
And you feel
a lot
like
of things
between the
go.
creative call and the treatment, if you haven't worked with a photographer before, that should really be able to kind of rise to the top for you. That should be very clear that they're very capable and they
Yes.
are aligned with your vision.
Yeah. And sometimes, you'd be on a call with, a client, and they might bring up a question like after seeing the treatment that you didn't even think about, because they're dealing with it in their own end, like in their whole brand side that you're not really involved with, because they have a whole like list of things that they're um sort of tackling. So it's interesting to sort of like find that perfect match. You're like, okay, everyone's sort of like aligned, like this person could accomplish what we're trying to do.
And when you're, at that presentation to your client, are you showing them the treatments, or are you just showing them a summary or a few little snippets from it, or do they see the whole thing?
They don't see the whole thing, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be a little overwhelming for them to see the whole thing, but they do see, like, kind of like the gist of, like, okay, though, this is what this is about. This person, how they would approach it.
And since you have three, and everybody else does too, three photographers or artists that you're presenting for a particular project, I'm guessing, all three of them have to be capable, because you never know who the client's going to choose. I'm assuming you would have a recommendation as a creative agency. Do you find that clients in general have kind of their own point of view, or are they mostly taking your recommendation?
I think it depends on the client and who's also working on the project, because I've had it go both ways. So
Yeah. Oh, and
yeah,
I have too.
I've experienced both ways, where the client was like, no, none of these would work, or like, oh, we want this person, or
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh, we recommend this person. They're like, great, let's do it. So it's just, I think, depends on who's on it, and yeah, how long they've been on this. And yeah, there's a lot of different answers to that, but I've had to go both ways.
Yeah, it's interesting because we used to love to hear that we were the recommend. Now I'm like, no, 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 don't tell me I didn't hear that. Like, I don't want to jinx it, because so many
Yeah.
times if you're the
Yeah.
recommend, it feels like, you, the agency, are presenting three very capable people, and a client
Right.
might have a very strong opinion about something else. And
Mhm.
so I almost don't ask anymore if we're the recommend,
Yeah,
unless
that's
there are
interesting.
specific reasons I would
Yeah.
ask. But just to know, I don't want to know.
I think the recommend does help.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Well, especially with an agency like yours, you're a very creative,
Mhm.
independent agency.
Mhm.
You'd like to think that your clients are hiring you to, you know, not just say yes to them, but really point them and push them in a creative direction. Do
Mhm.
your clients usually give you budgets, and do you share those with your team? Well, not just your team, but the people you're bidding.
Yeah. I've had it both ways again,
Hmm.
where they given us, like, okay, this is like our budget, or they asked us to sort of estimate, like, okay, how much would this cost? And I'm always transparent whenever I speak. I reach out to people and let them know, like, this is our budget, and this is what we have to work with, and I try to keep everything really fair.
It's great. Yeah, I had this conversation with someone recently, and I find like I have it often. I don't mind if I don't get a budget, if it's someone I've worked with before, or it's an agency or client I know recognizes the importance of a budget and the importance of the production and what it's going to cost. Where I need the
Yeah.
budgets is when I haven't worked with this client, or it's a small startup, or it's, somebody that is new to all of us, and their idea of, $20,000 is a lot of money. And they think, oh yeah, I have plenty of
Yep.
money, don't worry. And I come back with $100,000 estimate, and they are like, oh, I only had 20. That's when knowing the budget, making sure we're aligned is right. If you have a decent client that has had understands production, and you say to me, Heather, you know what, I just actually want to see where your numbers come in at, I know that you're going to tell me you're way off the mark, or yes, this is the approach I need you to take.
I think budgets are pretty straightforward. Like you said, I mean, yeah, if it's like a, new client that you have, like, I have no idea. But I think even then, it's just like, well, it is what it is. These are the numbers that,
Yeah.
this is like how much someone should be paid for this job, when you add it all up. So I think I mean, even if I don't really know what their budget is, and I just kind of go off on my own and create an estimate, their final number kind of does, like, line up and match up with what I have. So it's all pretty, like, even, I feel like.
Okay, so let's talk about marketing to you. How are photographers and directors, how are they connecting with you now? And how about reps? What's the biggest way that they're sharing work with you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 100% email right now.
Yeah. Is there anybody coming
I
to
used
visit
to get a
you?
lot of promos when I worked at an office, but, or maybe like an online portfolio review. We've had a couple of those. In person is always better.
Yeah, I agree. And how about in person? Are you meeting anybody in person at all or going to events at all? There's not really many events
Yeah,
out there.
I've done a few portfolio reviews, like in person ones, and mostly they've been online. If someone reaches out to me, whenever I have time, I say yes because it's just so nice to connect with people and also hear like how they've been sort of dealing with everything that has happened for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear like an outsider perspective. It's someone who's like doing, their day to day is so different than mine.
And when do you guys see yourself going back to the office, or are you not?
And that is the big question. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah. I mean, one day, like, I'm like really hopeful that it's like, okay, we're all going back. And then the next day something will happen. So
Yeah.
I thought that was going to happen last summer. So we'll see. Maybe this
Yeah.
summer. Who knows?
And then I was talking to my daughter and she was saying, we were just talking about when they might go back. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I hope they don't do it right before the summer. Like that would be a
Yeah.
bummer, right? Like everyone's going to be like, wait a minute, we had all winter to be indoors and
Yeah.
now I want to be outdoors. So,
Yeah.
well, okay, this has been great and super insightful. I always end the podcast asking two questions so that someone who's lasted through the entire podcast and wants to make sure you know that they did. What is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
My favorite thing to do on a Sunday is go on a hike
Oh, great.
and eat ice cream because those two things are perfect for a Sunday.
Yeah, that is pretty perfect. And you live in LA where you have such beautiful
Yeah.
places to hike.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
Graphic designer.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
then I think I have a fantasy answer. That's like my realistic answer. And then my fantasy answer is during the day, I'd be a hacker. And then in the evening, I'd be a DJ. So that's my
Oh my
fantasy
God.
answer.
Arpi, you win. That is the best. I love your fantasy answer. That is so fabulous. Congratulations. Of all the 80 something podcasts, you got that and the bus driver. Those are my favorites right now.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one too.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, this has been really great. I really appreciate your insights and the time that you took to have the conversation with us. It's really, all of our listeners appreciate being able to kind of get inside with someone especially from Wieden Kennedy. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Awesome.